Are media and news houses joining hands to fool the common people? Donald Trump and his political team's latest statement has set the entire internet on fire. Today, we will talk about this new breaking moment and expose the hidden principle behind the media. After all, what is the complete truth behind this viral video, and how will it affect you? Let's check out the evidence together.
The court battle over the ballroom. Peter Baker is chief White House correspondent for the New York Times and an MS Now contributor. And Susan Page is Washington bureau chief for USA Today. Fallon, let's start with the arguments over the president's ballroom project. What did you hear there in court today?
Yeah, Ariel, these arguments lasted just over 2 hours, and this is an appeals court that appears largely divided over the future of the ballroom. And that's largely in part because of this national security argument that the Trump administration has been making. They're saying that the ballroom itself is very important for the security at the White House complex, and that it would have prevented things like what happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and other attacks on the president's life if they had the ballroom. Now, what's really important to note is that that is a newer argument that the administration has been introducing since this appeals process started to play out. They've always made some sort of security argument, but that was more back in December, more in response to the fact that they had completely demolished the East Wing. There was a giant hole in the ground. It was an active construction site. It wasn't really that the ballroom itself was critical, and that's become a key argument and a new argument, and what they spent most of this hearing arguing today. Now, the trust has said that this is an unconstitutional project and that there's a statutory authority in place and that the president needs Congress's approval to do this project. And they're saying, look, there can be national security concerns, but those don't trump the congressional authority here. They're saying that there's precedent of this where Congress still has that authority. And they're also saying, look, there may be national security concerns. The president may just want this project. He can ask Congress for it, and that's how he'll get it. And so that's become really the central argument here today. There was skepticism from some of the judges, support from others. This is, of course, a 3-judge panel. One is an Obama appointee, one is a Biden appointee, and one is a Trump appointee. The Trump appointee had some very sharp questions for the National Trust over whether or not they even had the authority to bring this lawsuit in the first place. But I want to remind you something really important, because Judge Richard Leon is the district court judge who blocked this construction in the first place. The appeals court temporarily allowed it to continue while this appeal was playing out. But in Judge Leon's order, he specifically allowed for below-ground national security-related construction to continue. He simply said that all above-ground ballroom construction could not continue. And what's really important to note about Judge Richard Leon's order is that it was informed by classified documents that have to do with the national security. He reviewed these documents ex parte, meaning outside of court. And so he knows the national security stakes and what they're trying to do, and he still issued this ruling. But as far as the appeals court, I would expect we'll get a ruling in the coming weeks or months. Ariel?
Fallon, thank you so much for such a comprehensive overview of what you're seeing play out there. And Peter, what do you make of the administration, the way the administration is trying to turn this into a national security argument? You heard from Fallon's reporting there that the plaintiffs point out that that had not been the argument all along.
Yeah, no, that wasn't why he did this. He made it very clear why he did this when he first knocked down the East Wing. He wanted a big ballroom. He wants a place to have a big spectacle, a place where he can, fet visiting foreign leaders. And there's an argument, by the way, to be made. The state dining room where presidents have traditionally hosted foreign leaders is relatively small. You can only seat about 135, 140 people. Many presidents in the last number of years have had to put cathedral tents on the South Lawn because they had more guests that they wanted to have. So there's been an argument about the ballroom. It was never about security. Now it's become about security because that sounds better to the public than, hey, I want a really big ballroom. And there is a security element to it, obviously, because underneath the East Wing is where they had the bunker. That's important for, security on a day like a 9/11. Well, nobody told him to rip it out without congressional approval. This is a decision he made. The problem here is, having knocked down the East Wing, something's going to have to go there. So at some point or another, somebody's going to have to figure out how to proceed in a way that makes some sort of sense. And it's possible that the president can win in court and be able to proceed without Congress. But broadly speaking, most presidents have found it more advantageous to find some sort of a consensus when they made changes to the White House so that people can agree that it's for the people, not just for the president who lives there.
Yeah, they had put facts on the ground already. You can't just leave a big gaping hole there on the property. Susan, an organization called Public Citizen did some digging and found out that the majority of corporations that have donated to this ballroom have also received new or increased government contracts during essentially the same exact period. We're talking about contracts worth a combined $50 billion. That's an estimation. And of course, we don't at this point have any clear connection between these two things. But Public Citizen says the donations amount to, quote, massive and inescapable conflicts of interest. What do you see going on here?
And of course, these are only the corporate donors we know about. We haven't had a comprehensive listing of who's given money to the ballroom. For these donors, most of them have now received billion-dollar contracts since the donation was made. Others have gotten regulatory relief that they had been seeking from the administration. And as you said, we don't have a clear quid pro quo. It's not like we found that Public Citizen put out a memo that said, if you give $1 million, we will do this for you. But you look at the evidence, and it seems like an example of what good business it was to give money to this ballroom when the president was seeking to fund it.
Peter, the president has gone to great lengths to try to portray these projects as a benefit to the country.
That compiled that very important report. The co-president of Public Citizen is here, Robert Weissman. Robert, take us through the report's key findings and just add some context to what we already highlighted.
Yeah, well, you hit the top level points, but it's exactly what it seems. But more than 24 companies are giving a huge amount of money for regular people, but not for them, to pay for Trump's ballroom. And they're not doing it out of any sense of civic engagement or because they love their country. They're doing it because they've got huge business interests before the government. Primarily government contracts, which, as you said, total more than $50 billion in just the last 6 months, more than $330 billion over the last 5 years. But not just contracts. They've got all kinds of interest, policy interest, and crucially, more than 2/3 of them were facing federal enforcement actions, whether it's antitrust lawsuits or civil rights enforcement actions or unlawful firing of worker cases. And they are hoping to receive kind treatment from the president that they are helping fund. And there's every reason for them to expect that this is going to be a very worthwhile investment and a huge return for them, and more contracts, less enforcement, and more favorable policy decisions.
Let me follow up on that piece of it. The contracts being awarded are so gobsmacking, but it feels like the enforcement being halted is in some ways more insidious. And when you look at the way Todd Blanche has seemingly gleefully embraced using DOJ to carry out Trump's will, I wonder if you can just talk about the severity of the kinds of enforcement actions which appear to be impacted.
Yeah, well, as a general matter, we're seeing an unbelievable pullback on enforcement against corporations. At the same time, as you suggest, the administration now led by Todd Blanche at DOJ is weaponizing government enforcement against individuals that Trump perceives to be his enemies. We've seen that in the pardons that he's given to people who are well-connected, who have paid lobbyists to get pardons. We've seen that in the cases at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, where the ongoing cast and ongoing cases were designed to protect people from the most vicious of financial predatory lenders and schemers. And effectively, all of the enforcement is dropped there. The government actually tried to undo an already completed settlement and apologize to the company that it enforced against on a civil rights case. The judges wouldn't let that go through. That's a sign of how severe this is. And as you suggest, these are discretionary decisions. The government really has a lot of flexibility to choose to proceed or not. Of course, they should, where the law says they should. But there's a lot of discretion to make the decision, yes or no. And of course, these companies are expecting, if they're given $1 million, $5 million, $10 million to Trump's pet project, that they're going to get favorable treatment when prosecutors or enforcement agents are looking at whether to proceed or not. And they're being shown to be correct.
Robert, in doing this work, have you ever seen anything like this on the scale of this and as brazenly public as this?
Nope. No, I mean, the government undertakes, the response from the White House is hysterical, right? The government undertakes projects all the time, of course, in Washington, D.C., to develop monuments, maintaining monuments. We've got all these museums. The government pays for this stuff. And when it doesn't, it's done through really careful and authorized processes. There's nothing like destroying half the White House without getting congressional authorization and then seeking to pay for the rebuilding of a ridiculous ballroom by a handful of corporate donors and super billionaires. No, nothing like that has happened in recent memory or any memory or ever in American history.
David Fromm, you are one of the people whose commentary on this story as the East Wing was being bulldozed has stuck with me since those, and I remember those shows. I remember I sit here in front of a picture of the White House and their live shots, and I remember wanting to put a live picture behind me because Trump made a mockery of every use of sort of the iconography of the People's House, right? He bulldozed it, actually. And for all the stories that we've all tried to tell for 9 years, I don't know that anything shows instead of tells the story of his appetite for destruction of that which doesn't belong to him, like bulldozing the White House and letting corporations pay him to rebuild it.
Look at how you framed the story at the very top of the segment. You said, we've caught the government, public citizens caught the government, accepting hundreds of millions of dollars of bribes, for which it is recompensating or repaying the bribers by giving them tens of billions of dollars.
Trump Ballroom project is doomed, absolutely doomed, collapsing mid-construction. The budget's been slashed. Trump's effort to use the assassination attempt to get it done has backfired. And now it's been more politicized than ever. Like, we were talking about it, and I know many of you were, but like, if you watch my channel or you watch, the political YouTube, you're like a more engaged, plugged in, like informed person on politics than the average person. I'm not saying like to rip on other people. It's just not everyone watches politics YouTube every day in between elections, right? Election time, more people tune in. But the people who were talking about the ballroom were like the top 1 or 2% engaged Americans. And then when there was the assassination thing and he brought up the ballroom, all of a sudden millions of Americans for the first time ever really heard about the ballroom because everyone paid attention that night. It was big news. And then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, this so faked an assassination attempt to get a ballroom. Now, did he fake it? I don't know, but millions of people think he did. And in politics, this isn't right. This isn't fair, but it's the truth. Perception matters as much, if not more, than reality. And the perception is Trump faked an assassination to get a ballroom or to speed up his ballroom, get more money for it, get it fancier, and it's all backfired. And now it's over. And here's the thing. Even if by some measure it gets demolished and whatever Donald Trump does, the next Democratic president will destroy its legacy for Donald Trump. Here's what I recommend. The next Democratic president, let me know in the comments if you agree. They should name it the Michelle Obama Memorial Ballroom or the Michelle Obama Honoring Ballroom. That would be fitting.